God designed us to be learners. However, much of our learning and discipleship today regarding the church, current affairs, and theology has been reduced to pithy sayings and viral tweets. Just Say It seeks to help Christians go deeper on church, theology, scripture, and current issues in our world. I'm Chase Davis.
And I'm Matt Patrick. And join us and other guests for a monthly conversation on the topics that are impacting Christians in the church here in Colorado. You can expect candid conversations on the topics ranging from church attendance during ski season to Spurgeon's view of the atonement.
Well, welcome to the podcast. I thought we'd get started by talking about why we would have a podcast. Seems like everybody has a podcast.
That's why we want one, Chase.
Yeah, sure. So I thought the pertinent question people must be asking, at least I was asking when you said we should do a podcast, was why do we need to do a podcast? What is the purpose of it? What's kind of inspiration behind why we're getting started?
Yeah, I think it's an important thing in the time, especially we find ourselves in, to be able to help form our people better. And I didn't want to do a podcast, and I know you didn't either, that was just like this generic podcast that went out to the masses. And obviously, it's online. It's going to go to the masses.
Sure.
And it's going to go out to all these people. But we really wanted to equip the people of the well first, and then maybe Boulder County and our state with the specific things going on. And kind of the thrust behind it was, you and I, we have all these great conversations all the time about a wide range of things that are going on in the world. I think of all the way back to our times when we were in seminary together. Yep. And driving down in your truck. And I tried to convince you that we should do a podcast in your truck called Two Guys Going to Seminary. And that didn't happen. But nope. I was like, I've always kind of wanted to do that. And I was like, I think it'd be helpful for people if we could let them in on some of the conversations we're having.
Yes.
Some of the conversations we're having with our friends. And that's why we want to have some guests. And just kind of be able to talk about the hard things and really just dive into the things. And that's why we call it Just Say It, right? It's like, that's what we do when we're alone. We just kind of say it. And so we just want to basically invite you all out there into our conversations, which we think will be helpful for our church and for our state.
Yeah, I kept having so many conversations with people that they were reading various resources. Everybody's getting different information. Now you've got misinformation and facts and alternative facts. And I just wanted to provide a place for our church to really rally around and say, hey, what do our pastors think about these issues? I think a lot of us were caught off guard in 2020 when a lot of things were going on, and we didn't really feel like sermons were necessarily the most appropriate way to deal with that. We have other ministries at the well, like Theology on Tap, but I think back to the Reformation, how the Reformation happened right alongside the technology of the printing press, and how that accelerated the Reformation and the good work done then. And I think using a podcast is a great way to equip people to speak on current issues. It also helps us if there are common questions we get, in our ministry, then we can bring them up here and provide a helpful biblical answer that's more informed. I think that's what we're kind of getting at too, is like we sense a lot of kind of evangelical culture is kind of simplistic and kind of goes into platitudes. Yeah. And we're like, man, like it's okay to be nuanced, but you can't nuance everything to death. Let's just say it. Let's just get it out there, and let's equip people to think biblically.
For sure, and I think as we do that, we're given certain mediums to communicate through. As pastors, we have sermons. We have things like you said, Theology on Tap, our men's advanced nights, any other trainings or anything else like that we do. But we also are people ourselves. We're humans. You're a man, I'm a man, and we exist in our own realities, and we have our own opinions on things.
Sure.
That a lot of times don't make it into the pulpit, nor should they.
Right.
Right. Like that's an important distinction, because people might read a tweet or a Facebook post that I or you make and just kind of run with that and think, oh, this is what my church believes. And that's not always necessarily true. You and I have differences on stuff. And, and that's all fine. And so this is an attempt at some level to go, hey, like we can probably get a little bit more personal here in a way that would be inappropriate in a sermon. Right. Or maybe even a discipleship training tool within the church on a specific topic. This allows us the freedom to kind of go a little bit wider, or even really just drill down. And I know, Chase, for you, it's been a big passion of yours through your education into your THM, now your PhD, and trying to equip people and understand our history, where we come from, why we do what we do, and how that impacts where we're at now, and really what the future looks like. And so what are you excited about as we dive into this podcast together in regards to those sorts of things?
I think I'm most excited to delve into articles, books, series that normal everyday Christians are reading. You know, a great example, and maybe we'll cover this in the podcast, is I had a phone call with my dad, you know, who lives in Dallas, and it was back in 2021, and he calls me and he goes, "Hey, have you heard of this Rise and Fall of Mars Hill podcast?" And I was like, "Good Lord, everybody's listening to this." You know, and I was listening to it too.
I've never heard of it.
Have you not?
No.
Yeah, it's a small thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I'm remiss that I can't equip our people, because we're part of Acts 29 and we're trying to, you know, lead our people, and that our church is part of that kind of legacy of Driscoll. It would seem useful for the pastors of the well to speak into that particular matter. And you can only do so much online. And really my heart behind it is, look, I want to broaden the conversation so that people can feel like the well is a place, because we are a place, and we always have been that kind of place in Boulder, where people can ask tough questions and receive really theologically rich and informed, not always perfect, not always precise in terms of like, we've got it dialed in. You know, when we planted, we were young guys, and we still are relatively young, and we've got a long way to go. But
even though my beard doesn't.
No, the gray works great. You're like
Thank
Moses.
You. Thank you. I need to find an Aaron.
Yeah, I'll be Aaron. Good
I'll
Lord.
be my son.
Oh no. And so yeah, I just want the podcast to be a place where, look, we can bring hard questions from people that are in our church, and hopefully talk about them and give an honest feedback from the Bible, from church history, theologically rich answers that are applicable to all life.
Yeah, as pastors, there's a frustration. I mean, we talk to pastors all the time. We were just on the phone with one before we even came here. Mm-hmm. And we talk to them all the time, and it's always this frustration that you feel when you know your people are absorbing material.
Yeah.
And you're called to shepherd them, help form them, and do all of the work of equipping the saints for the work of ministry. And we live in such an age where there's so much information readily available to everybody, which can be very good. And it can also be confusing and bad. And so at times, it's just there's this pastoral frustration that I sense throughout the church within pastors of going, man, I just want to be able to talk to my people more about these things.
Yep.
And it's not like, oh man, we're going to turn like book burners or something like that.
Right.
I don't know, maybe some books should be burned. I don't know.
We made that a podcast episode.
Yeah, we can figure that out later. I'm sure that'll be the clip that gets taken out of this and used later. Like, Matt Patrick, all for book burning. So be it. But I'm not. But there is a very real frustration that comes with that. And we just wanted to find a way to be able to communicate with our people, people in Colorado, in a way that expanded that conversation and just really helped people out more than anything. Because there's so many good things, there's so many bad things, and it's how do you differentiate those things? And that's part of our job to help do that.
Yeah, and I think for me, you know, a big tension for me is, look, I want people in our church to feel like they're able to find answers at their local church. They don't need to go to multinational organizations with the label Christian in order to go find good answers. We can provide that. Not only that, but we live in an age of cynicism, distrust, and we believe trust is the bedrock of all healthy relationships. And we love, kind of a hallmark of our ministry has been transparency, and we want to provide honest answers. And so, you know, even with people in the church, I remember growing up in the church, it can be scary to come to a pastor. It can be scary to sit down and have a conversation. It can be intimidating. And I don't want that for any Christian. And so this is an opportunity for us to hear from people at our church and for us to have a conversation in a way with people at our church and what they're reading and just further that relationship and build that trust with people in the church, because the unity of the body during these really contentious times is crucial. And the unity around the core doctrines of Christianity, around our statement of faith, around what we believe as Christians, and our trust in Jesus Christ is the fountainhead of the trust we're going to have in the church.
Yeah, I think one other thing for me that was really important in doing this was that when you lead a church, or just like in even just the Christian landscape in general, we have such a variation of length of time of walking with God, knowing God, trusting God, and that can lead to a lot of people not knowing what to think. And a lot of times a sermon can be over somebody's head, or it can almost seem simplistic, and there's all these variations. And as a preacher, you're always trying to kind of hit on these different points. And so we need tools like this. And what a better way than to use modern technology like we have in front of us that's able to do this, to kind of get something else out there, something that can fill in those gaps where maybe you're thinking really heavy, as we say in our intro, about Spurgeon's view of atonement, all the way down to the husband who's trying to decide, should I go skiing this weekend instead of going to church?
Right.
Who's a new believer.
Right.
Right? Like, I think those are all important things. We want to cover all of those topics. And so there's going to be a wide range here, and that's intentional, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I hope you'll join us as we host this podcast. We're excited to get started. I know Matt's been chomping at the bit for this opportunity for a while.
I have.
so we're both really excited to do this, bring this to you. Any other closing thoughts for people?
Yeah, no, just this is going to be a lot of fun. And I'm sure we'll get better at it as we go. But it's going to be a lot of fun to just kind of hash some stuff out. You'll get to see some of our differences, right? You'll get to hear from other people. And we're going to dive into the things that are truly important. And that's why we entitled it, Just Say It.
Right.
Because that's what we're going to do here. And obviously, we want to do that in a way that's loving and Christ-like.
Yes.
But what we do just want to say it and put it out there so that we can grow.
Well, thanks for joining us today. This podcast is a ministry of the Well Church. We meet in Boulder. You can visit us at boulderwell.org. And we'd love it if you could subscribe to stay tuned with what we're promoting and what we're talking about. Share it with a friend. Give it a great rating if you love it. And join us next time for our next episode.